Hi everyone, welcome to Yachting International Radio. You're with Karine Rayson from the Crew Coach on your mental health. This week this month in fact, we're focusing on men and mental health, being Men's Health Awareness Month. And today I've got Ari Steele with us from Super Yacht Living. I'm sure a lot of you have been following him on Instagram, and he has the courage to share his experience and his perspective on men and mental health. So thank you so much, Ari, for joining me.
It's a real pleasure, Karine. Thanks for having me.
So if you can give us a little bit of context of how long you've been in the industry for and where you're at now, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. I've been in the industry for about 5 years. In 2015, I transitioned from a hospitality career in Australia, and I traveled the world for a little bit and did a little bit of education, a yacht master, a dive master, and pursued a career on deck in 2015. So that's been great. It's been fantastic. I've only been on 2 boats, so I've had quite a bit of longevity in that time, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And recently, 3 months ago, unfortunately, I broke my hand at work in a workplace accident. So I've been off in the interim where I was working as a bosun, and I've been back in the south of France at my place here and doing a lot of work with helping new crew members out. But it looks like, unfortunately, the recovery is going to take a little bit longer than I anticipated. So I'm looking actually to transition out of yachting into a land-based role, still within the yachting industry though.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So with regards to, I think a good starting point is, I know that you're from Australia and I live in Australia, and having worked with men for at least 5 years in the prison system, and as I was transitioning out of that and finding my career again in yachting, before I nearly didn't go the crew coach route because based on research, I discovered that we have about 6 to 7 men who choose to end their life here in Australia a day. And I thought, oh my word, I need to do something. I need to help men in isolating industries. So in terms of, if I put the word out there, mental health, what does that mean to you, mental health?
Misunderstood, I think. I think a lot of men, it's stigmatized and they feel it's a weakness to perhaps share their emotions and share their feelings with people. And they perceive that they're going to be judged negatively for it. And that's why a lot of guys, they don't talk about things that they should be talking about. And it's the strategies you need to do about it. I mean, the way that I like to approach mental health is that it's the same as physical health. You need to work on your physical health. You also need to work on your mental health. No one is automatically going to be an unbelievable physical specimen. It takes work. And just like with mental health, you need to work on it, and you need to consistently work on it. Sometimes that means you need to put a lot of effort into it to start with, and then, but even when things are great, you still need to maintain it with little bits along the way and treat yourself kindly.
Yes. Yes. So if you can share with us your lived experience working on board, were those sort of conversations being held around, how are you really feeling? And if you notice someone a bit down or anything like that, like how do the men cope or deal with it? How do they talk about it?
Men in general don't talk about it, unfortunately. It's a lot of things that men communicate with goes unsaid. Men communicate in very subtle ways oftentimes. So while we may not, if you've got good support systems on board, a lot of that isn't verbally said. A lot of that is just having good, positive, encouraging role models on board, and having good, positive, encouraging fundamentals happening as well in regard to the way people support each other, and also the culture that's established on board. What kind of culture? Is it a highly party drinking culture, or is it people more interested in helping people pursue their individual goals? Those kind of things as well. So I think things are improving for the better. For example, the last boat I was working on, it was, there was things put up on the nose board saying, you can call this number if you'd like to talk to someone. But for example, it could have been done better perhaps with senior people on board offering to be a mentor or to listen to people, and not to have this attitude of, yachting's tough. Yachting is really, really hard, especially in the midst of a season when things are long. not having the sort of the man up mentality, not being like, man up, just put the hours in, do the work. We're all allowed to have some down periods or some blue periods. And, people shouldn't feel like they're showing weakness to have that. It's just, if you're down, you're down. That's okay. Just as long as you've got the intention of trying to get and put yourself into a positive place, I think that should be enough for people.
Yes, yes. And when you talk about culture, because this is something that I have in my leadership course around how do you build culture? What does that look like? Because it's a pretty huge word, and values. You're like, oh, what? That's not really tangible. So I can't really understand what you mean by values. And the whole thing about having, the big framed, say, your values on the wall, and it's all very well that it's there and you can see it every day, but when it's not shown on the floor, it means nothing. And you do need to see that consistency. So to describe to our listeners, you mentioned role model. So what does a positive role model look like in that context, and the values that you would hope to see on board a yacht that demonstrates a positive culture? What would you say that looks like?
Well, a positive role model is someone who walks the talk. They preach a certain way. So, for example, they may say, in yachting, we're known for working hard and playing hard. You have to be careful with that, I suppose, because what does happen, as we all know, is that people do go too hard. They treat themselves very poorly. They ingest too much chemical substances, too much alcohol, things of this nature. I'm really, really I feel very strongly about that. And also, I know, coming from my Australian culture as well, heavy drinking just has really no place in a professional environment. So I think that needs to be established. Part of establishing good culture is having a healthy relationship with drugs and alcohol. That's not to say you have to abstain, but it does mean that tolerance for people absolutely wrecking themselves, it shouldn't be accepted, first of all. So if you've got someone saying that, for example, if you have a chief officer or a captain saying, I don't want you showing up drunk to work, and then you see them doing the same, obviously they're not walking the talk. And no one has any respect for these people. If it happens a couple of times, okay. If it continues to happen, how do you have faith in this person? Safety needs to be paramount on board. We need to be looking after the safety of our crew. And as we're talking about now, it's not just the physical safety, it's the emotional and mental safety of people as well. What happens is that when if you have an argument with someone on board, someone's feeling extremely heated, and you haven't listened to them and considered their emotional state, then this person is in a heightened state of mind in which they can make mistakes, and those mistakes can lead to physical accidents and perhaps even death. So these are something to be considered as well. Culture, it needs to be fun, where you have to have. It's an interesting thing on yachts where it is professional, but you living in such close proximity to people, you need to be understanding of things. In a lot of ways, they are like a family. Like, you may have a brother or sister you really don't get along with, but they're still your brother and sister. You're forced to live in the same environment, so you have to be extremely respectful of that. That's part of culture on board as well. And you should be constantly trying to extend olive branches. You should be constantly trying to make sure that you have at least some form of semblance of a positive relationship with these people. Even if you don't like them, you've got to constantly put the effort in. If people are doing that all the time, it leads to positive culture on board.
Yes. So what would you say to someone where, if there was a drinking and alcohol, drug taking behavior like happening on board, and I know with all the yachts that I've worked on, it was all about the booze and long rosé lunches and all of that, and I'm not a big drinker. Some stage in the night I was just trying to throw away all my drinks because I was like, I can't do this, and it's like, come on. So all the peer pressure starts.
Sure, absolutely.
For a guy to draw the line when all your mates are like, have one more drink, this is fun, do a line, like, how do you negotiate that battle?
Yeah, look, there's not an easy answer to it. I think you just need to be confident within yourself as well. Like, there's a lot of power in being able to tell someone no without also, infringing on their fun as well. So for me, I'm actually doing a 1 year no beer challenge at the moment, so a year without alcohol. It's been really, really great. I've got my own personal demons with alcohol. I don't mind telling people that I'm a recovering alcoholic. So I'm trying to get myself to the position where I can enjoy alcohol responsibly, but I also know that I'm susceptible to indulgence with it as well. So I think you need to be introspective. I think you need to have look at yourself. Do I have an issue with this? And I think a lot of people, more than we care to admit, actually do have issue with alcohol. They can't enjoy it in a responsible manner. It's just part of being responsible. If you are at a workplace, you have a duty to be responsible. So how do we do that? It's by making sure that we as leaders within the community are leading positively. If you're a chief officer or a captain, you owe it to your crew, you owe it to your deckhands. If you're a chief stewardess, you owe it to the girls working with you to represent and put out a positive role model framework so that they have something to base, so that people have something to build themselves around, so they have something to aspire toward, so that they can emulate success by seeing success. So if they see a person that can have a lot of fun, have a few beers, then midnight comes around, they can go home and do it continuously, not just once in a while, but have it part of their value system. Then people want to do that as well. I mean, I've found huge success by just leading by example, but just showing people how I do it. People don't want to be the guy that is super hungover at work when they know that everyone else was doing the right thing. They feel like shit. And then you also need to put some sort of disciplinary system in place on the boat to say, look, if you're not in a condition to work, you can't work. You got to go to bed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a day of leave. That's a day of leave taken off. I haven't been able to work. It's been your decision. You don't need to necessarily be over judgmental with these people. They made an error. They erred. Allow them to rest. Take the time, because it's not safe to have them working. Put them down. Take a day of leave off them. They'll learn. They'll learn.
And I think that's a really good way of managing it, is having a policy and referring back to it and just keeping it at the forefront of the crew's mind. Firstly, I want to acknowledge you and say thank you very much for sharing something pretty personal, pretty big in this public forum. And I think that's leading by example, everything that we're talking about. So really, thank you for that. And if you're happy to talk about it, that would be amazing in terms of, I know that there are a lot of crew members out there that struggle with alcohol. So firstly, how would you recognize that you do have an issue with alcohol when it's part of a culture?
I think for me, it's just that I don't have impulse control, in that it's very difficult for me to have 3 beers, which, I think we're all going to draw the line at different points. But for me, if I have 3 beers, I start to get a little lightheaded, and that becomes the tipping point where either I'm going to go home or I'm going to go and have a lot more. So I think to recognize, is it affecting your relationships? Do you have a lot of fights when you're out having drinks? Okay, if you're one of those people that seems to always be getting in arguments while you're having alcohol, I can almost guarantee you've got a problem, because you aren't able to filter yourself, or there's things inside that you want to say that you don't have the courage to say until the boundaries are pulled down by the alcohol. So that to me is a sure sign that you've got an issue with alcohol. Do you have the same issues I have, in that you find it very difficult to stop at a certain point? At that point, you've got an issue with alcohol. Are you spending a lot of money on alcohol? Is it something that you wake up in the morning and say, oh, wow, I really regret spending all that money? Or do you feel terrible? Or do you find it hard? Is it getting in the way of you achieving the goals that you're setting for yourself? That to me is that you've got an obvious issue with alcohol. I think it's really hard to be introspective sometimes, especially when you're surrounded by people that are actually in the same position you're in. They're actually making the same errors you're making, and that's when it becomes a part of culture. But I think really at the end of the day, you've got to look after your own health, and you need to be comfortable enough within yourself to realize that you're probably a lot of fun even when you're sober. You're probably a lot of you're great company anyway. You don't need the alcohol to perhaps do that. You don't need the alcohol to enjoy yourself.
So how long were you struggling with alcohol for?
I started drinking when I was 12, and I still struggle with it to this day. So I've gone through, I guess, different iterations throughout my life, some really deep and dark times, and all of those I can attribute to excess alcohol use. I I think pretty much every single bad thing that's happened in my life, I would attribute to alcohol in some way or another, excessive alcohol.
Okay. And did you get feedback that you're drinking too much from your loved ones?
Yeah, definitely. It took a long time for me to think of it. I think culturally within my family, we're not big drinkers, so that helped a lot, I suppose, in that I was stepping outside of the boundaries and the identities of what my family sort of related to. Both my brother and I, we struggle with alcoholism quite a bit. He's better, I think, than I am, but he's also struggled with excess drinking in the past. My sisters are a bit better, and my parents both are quite good with drinking as well. So for me to not have a family that was excessively drinking has allowed me to identify it, because I had my father saying to me from a young age when I was drinking, I was in my late teens perhaps, and he's saying, why are you drinking so much? I'm telling him because it's fun. All my friends are doing it. That's what we're doing. And he's a very non-judgmental man. I'm really fortunate to have such a wonderful father who was always happy to listen to me. But it didn't take me until years later that I was sort of trying to emulate and trying to, I guess, trying to mold myself into what kind of man did I want to be. And, he's set the framework in a lot of ways. He's set the targets and goals I wanted to achieve. A lot of those I can reach to him. And excess alcohol didn't have anything to do with that. He's not the kind of guy that did that. So if I wanted to be like him, then it didn't involve heavy drinking. So yeah, to answer your question, absolutely. My loved ones did realize that. And even my friends that do drink a lot, I think I was the worst out of all of them. So I think even it was funny, I guess, to them, because I always had a funny story to tell. But even after a while, they were like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. And I think, when you look at the cycle of abuse and the cycle of change, it always starts with self-awareness. Like, you do need to have that awareness that there is a problem, and then you need to have a willingness to change, because you're sitting in that zone where it's like, yeah, I can see how it's problematic, but it's so much fun. And then when it's more pleasure, then we're tending to go that route. And if it's more pain in terms of, look, if I stop drinking, I might get judged for it, I might not have as much fun. And those are the common thoughts that go through our minds. And so for yourself, when we focus on the word fun, drinking and fun, especially in our industry, how has your life changed as a result of not drinking now? Do you find that you're exploring other activities? How are you filling your time? Are you having much fun? Like, what is that experience for you?
I've actually got to be honest with you. I think I am actually having a little less fun, to be absolutely honest. I think what happens is naturally as I get older, I'm getting tempered. I think I'm very fortunate. I've traveled extensively. I've done so much with my life. I've reinvented myself career-wise like 3 times. That I'm 33 now. I feel like I've just done so much that for me, if I wasn't to have another fun day ever again, I'd be like, you know what? I probably had more fun than most people. So there's a certain satisfaction in that I don't have FOMO. I don't have this fear of missing out that I guess a lot of people do have. So I'm ahead of a lot of other people in that way, I suppose, that I feel really privileged to have had many, many great experiences. But I think you do take a bit of a hit. But the positive is I've got so much more money. This is great. So I'm able to achieve goals. I've got property now. I've got investments. I'm able to do wonderful things. For example, I'm out of work at the moment. It's no big deal. My partner and I, we sat down and did the finances. If I don't pull in and she doesn't pull in another euro for 2 years, we're still in a great position. So you just don't have that kind of security. So your values and what's important to you changes, I suppose, as you get older. And you've got to sort of talk to yourself and say, okay, it's funny and it's cute when you're 20. Yeah. It's less so when you're 30, and it's really, really sad when you're 40, when you have these people that drink so excessively. So you have to really say to yourself, who do I want to be? Does this, it's really, really important.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you say, who do I want to be? This industry is so tight-knit. like everyone knows everyone, and you got to think about your personal brand and
Sure.
how taking alcohol and drugs can really tarnish that. And it's like, well, how do I want to be perceived? And is this the look I want to go for? Is this
Absolutely.
how I want to be remembered?
Definitely, definitely. I mean, the advice I give to go. I mean, I mentor a lot of people. I'm really fortunate to have these wonderful relationships with so many people that look up to me and ask me for advice. But the guys I work with specifically, I say to them, look, you're young. You should be having fun. At the same time, when you're at work, I want to take a pragmatic approach, especially with drug use, for example. Young guys are going to do drugs. They're going to do it. But I say to them, don't do it on the yacht, okay? We all get lots of leave. If you go home and you want to smoke some weed, you want to snort some lines, go for it. I don't, whatever. You know, that's fine. But when you're on the yacht, why risk it? Why would you're at work, okay? We're dealing with really, really important matters of safety. And you would feel terrible if something were to happen either to yourself or to someone else because, you know, you've been doing drugs. I just really want to be pragmatic with that. I don't want to make it like a straight rule with people and say drugs are bad, end of story, don't do it. I think young people are going to do things. I think they should just really, really carefully choose when and where they're going to do things. You know?
Well, yeah, and obviously the age cohort within our industry, it's quite young. So mostly in our 20s, we're seeing crew in their 20s coming through. And going back to psychoeducation that I did in the prison system, we talked about using safely. So they've got addiction, and it's not like you need to just go cold turkey, but let's talk about how you can use safely. And perhaps this is a strategy that yacht management companies can employ, is having that psychoeducation there available, not turning a blind eye to it, because we all know it happens, and to essentially mitigate against any risk. So I know that a crew member fell off the passerelle and drowned. Like, so these accidents that are connected to drug and alcohol, it's not okay. So we have to be creative in terms of how we keep our crew members safe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it needs to be in place. There needs to be the infrastructure within the yacht to deal with it. And I think really it comes back to that culture though. I think people need to take some ownership, especially people that are in middle management, chief officers, chief stewardesses, down to sort of where I was working in the bosun or the third officer capacity, second stewardesses. You need to take some ownership for the culture of the boat. Actually, to be honest, I think the culture of the boat is created around that hub of people more so than, for example, the captain or management. I think they can influence it, sure, but the true culture of a yacht comes from that middle management sphere, as I like to call it, because everything stems from there. These are the people that everyone looks up to. So we as leaders really, really need to take this on our shoulders, and you need to take ownership of that, lead by example. You need to reach out to a lot of these younger people in the community and show them that it's okay, it's all right if you've made a mistake, if you've done something to excess, whatever mistake you've made, or if you're struggling with something as well, it's that's fine. There's no problem with that. But let's work on improving that. Let's work on what we can do to take the steps towards getting you in a place where you feel really, really great about yourself emotionally and mentally.
Excellent advice. So in terms of, how long have you been sober now for?
10 months.
10 months. Oh my word. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. I will just say, I had a slip up the other day. I'm a massive Geelong Cats fan for the AFL, and we made it to the grand final.
Yes.
And I went to a bar in Antibes, and I said to myself, look, I'm gonna have, if we are gonna win, I'm gonna have some drinks. And then at halftime, because it never happens. At the same time, I thought I want to have and enjoy alcohol when the time comes, because it is enjoyable to do, but you need to choose and pick your times.
Yeah.
When you do it. Halftime came around, we were winning, and I said, you know what, I'll have a pint of Guinness. I think this is going to be good. I had a pint of Guinness. We ended up losing the game, and I'd made a bet with a guy for some shots. I had a shot. I had another couple of beers. But you know what? It got to a point where I'd had quite a bit. I was feeling a bit drunk, and I was with my partner. I said, "Come on, let's go home." And she was like, "Okay." So I went home. I felt a little bit bad the next day, but not bad. And I was actually really happy with myself in the sense that I set out to do a year, but I made 10 months.
Yeah.
I said something that I was going to do. I didn't quite reach what I wanted to do, but I came really, really close. And I'm really, really happy with that. So again, I'm going to complete the year. I had the one slip up, but in my mind, I might be justifying it a bit, but I'm still really, really proud of myself. I'm still really, really happy with what I achieved. And I don't feel negative at all in that, I had a few drinks on a special day.
That's really good. And that's important to notice your emotion behind that, because if we feel guilt or shame, we tend to then mask it with the stuff that we've been trying to avoid. So it's great that you're able to recognize and identify it and give yourself some grace and know that you can just pick yourself up and start again. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's a learning curve too. So for yourself going through that journey, did you have anything set up for yourself in terms of support or anything like that to help you achieve your goal?
I think to have the accountability, I told as many people as possible. I told definitely my partner. I use my partner a lot. She's French, so for her it's very difficult to understand culturally why I drink to excess. Because for her it's very easy to have 2 glasses of wine over the course of an evening, and that's all she has. It's very easy for her to do that because from a young age, she's been having a glass of wine with dinner. It's just what they do. They do it very well here in France in establishing positive relationships with alcohol. Now, as an Australian, culturally, we struggle with that. And me specifically, I struggle with that. So for her, to get her to understand that and then to support me in it was really helpful. Once I could communicate that effectively with her as to the demons I have with it, then having her as a support and a person to keep me accountable was really, really great. And for example, even the other day when I was at the football, watching the football, and I said to her, I want to do this, she was like, absolutely. If you want to have a couple of drinks, you've deserved it at this point. And then when I said I'd had enough, again, she supported me completely. She said, yeah, okay, you've had enough. Let's finish it up for the day. So that helped a lot. Having someone to be 100% behind you at all times was really great. And then all my friends as well were very encouraging. Even everyone I told was really, really good about it. Everyone said that even when I was at the football, there was a couple of Australian guys that had come to watch the football with me. I didn't know. I just reached out and found them online. We sat there. A guy said, "Oh, can I get you a beer?" I said, "Actually, I'm doing 1 year no beer." He was like, "Okay, great, good for you, fantastic." And that's great. That's a sign of the times. I don't even think 5 years ago you could have done that. That would have been a lot harder. But he was very supportive in that. This guy I'd only just met, guy that was really, really keen to have a lot of pints. So that's really good. And a lot of people ask me, how's it going? I said, yeah, it's going great. So I think telling a lot of people has held me accountable.
And that's also important to note is your circle of influence, because I know that some crew members say that their crew try and beg them or convince them that they can just have one drink because they're trying to appease their own guilt. Because as you said, like you wake up the next morning and you're thinking, oh my God, what have I done? So it's just to be mindful of who your friends are, because your good friends would want to see you thrive and do very well. And those who want to sabotage you reaching to your goals are not the friends that you need in your life. And I have another question for you with regards to the topic of asking for help. What do you think the barriers are with regards to men seeking help? So, for example, myself, I'm a professional counselor, and what I'm noticing more and more of, especially this year, I'm getting more male crew members reaching out and talking. And I know you mentioned that there was a number in the crew mess that you could call, but what do you think could get in the way of men reaching out for help, and what would your advice be in terms of overcoming those particular barriers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Karine. There are a lot of boundaries and barriers that you need to overcome. A lot of them are just within yourself as a man. You need to overcome them yourself, but there are barriers on board. I think we can refer to it as that sort of modern liberal term, which is toxic masculinity, in that there are some really toxic masculine traits that seem to rear their ugly heads on yachts, especially from some of the more senior old school yacht guys who they love their little yacht bubble. They love being the top of the pyramid, being able to do basically whatever they want unchecked. And these are not the kind of guys that are probably going to offer you good counsel unless you've got a very close relationship with them. So I think what you need to do is have a look at yourself and think, is there some, because sometimes you can just counsel yourself. I'm actually quite good at that now, in that I can just sort of process things out, think things through, say, what do I need to change with myself? Okay, maybe I need to be a bit more good with my exercise. Maybe I need to be a bit more structured with this or that. But just realizing there is an issue, sometimes you can work through it yourself. That is definitely not always the answer. And I've had the best results from big problems by eventually being able to verbalize them. And I think what you need to do is, I'll go back. This is a bit of a nuanced story, but I think you'll find it quite interesting. Due to alcohol, when I was 21 years old, I was in Greece traveling. I was really inebriated, and I managed to get myself in a really negative situation in which I got badly beaten up, and my face was fractured, my jaw was broken nose. I had to have a reconstructive surgery on my palate, 12 surgeries, 36 months, all due to alcohol. And what happened is I developed some, it was never really diagnosed, but it was, I guess, PTSD.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Yeah, so it was really traumatic in a lot of social scenarios. And that actually I found needing to drink more alcohol to be in social scenarios to feel comfortable. So I think that probably made the alcoholism worse. And I just struggled with many things that came from this. And what was the road to recovery? And I was just degrading. Things were getting worse. Even with the surgeries, I looked okay again, and my teeth, I've had implants and stuff done for my teeth, and they were okay. The tipping point was one of my best friends, and we were actually having a big dispute at the time over a girl, funnily enough. And I actually, one day, I just came to his door and I just cried, and I spoke for about 20 minutes straight, and he just listened to me. I don't know, really, can't really remember why, but I just had to talk and I had to get it all out. And I talked and he just listened, and he goes, shit, I didn't realize things were so bad for you at the moment. I'm really happy, and thank you for sharing it with me. Thank you for choosing me to talk about with this. And yeah, bro, let's sort this out. And even just that talking about things and all these things that have worried me so much and were hurting me so much, just having that conversation with him was a huge relief. That was massive.
Yeah.
Just that one thing, that one scenario was the most important thing. And since then, I mean, that's 8 years ago now. It's been a long and constant and slow recovery from that, and it's taken a while. But I think just being realistic that it was going to take time, but also just being validated that I had such a good friend that wanted, even though I chose what I thought was a huge weakness, he was more committed than ever to being my friend, to being involved.
Yes, and I think we could build up, what's the worst case scenario of what could happen if we did reach out and become vulnerable. And it's like, oh, I'm going to be seen as weak, where in fact your friend was like, gosh, thank you so much for having the courage to share this and choosing me so that I can support you and give back to you, because that's what friends are about. And it sounds like your friend, was just there, present and actively listening to you in a safe space. And that is so powerful in itself. Like I would say with providing counsel, sometimes it's better off not to say anything and just be present and make that eye contact and really hear the person out and go, wow, I can hear that you're in pain right now, and that must be really tough. And that's all you need to say, because sometimes you can get yourself in trouble by saying the wrong thing, like, don't worry, mate, come, let's go have a drink and we'll work it out. Like, it's maybe not the right thing to do in the moment. So I think trust your intuition on that one. But thank you.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice in what you're saying, and that a lot of the time people just want to be heard. It's not really, I think where I was going with that is that I wanted to get to the point that I've helped a lot of people just by being, since that time, just by being there to listen. And that I'm not qualified really to give advice, but I'm very qualified to just listen. I can listen to anyone,
Yeah.
which is what a lot of people want to hear. So what they want to do, they want to listen. And so you can just actively listen, and actively listening is something that we should all learn, and that you're just showing people that you're engaged. It's a little trick that I use, that when someone's trying to talk to me and they want to be heard, I just repeat little bits of what they say, and they love it. They just like, they're saying, and I was feeling really, really down. I said, oh, you were feeling down? And they're like,
And they
yeah,
go,
I was feeling
yes, that's it. I'm feeling down.
and so they want to go that, and that's something that for your own mental health, if you can learn to be a good listener and help other people, I think that you'll find that it's easier for you to communicate your own things as well. So if you think that you're struggling with some stuff, maybe the thing you can do is maybe reach out and help someone else. And then you never know, maybe they'll be very receptive to listening to you as well. And I think what you and I were talking earlier on before we started this, in that men and women are fundamentally different. I'll just come to, with guys, for me, that was like, I just purged everything emotionally. I managed to get everything out, and I really didn't need to share anything emotional about myself for probably a couple more years. Sometimes with guys, it's only every couple of years you really need to have a good vent and talk about it. Not to say you should just hold it all in until it all just overflows, but also I think if you're not comfortable with sharing every single emotional thought about yourself every day, you don't have to do that either. It's about finding the amount that's right for you. But destigmatize it. Be open to the fact that you probably are a really good person, whoever you are. You've probably got some really great character traits, and people want to be around you. I'm sure there's some people who do want to listen to you. So be open to the fact that you just sharing maybe something negative about yourself, or what you're construing as negative anyway, probably just puts you more in the human category, and people will understand that. We all have mental problems of some capacity, to some degree.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. I doubt very much that anyone is going to look at it negatively just to hear that you're struggling with something.
Yeah. And normally it triggers them in a way, in a positive way, because they're like, gosh, it's actually cathartic for me to hear that out loud, that you were struggling too, and you strengthening the bond between that yourself and that other individual. And just to give the listeners some tips about active listening, as you said, Ari, the summarizing is so important, or just picking up on key words that people are saying, and reflecting back and clarifying is another skill involved with active listening. So what I hear you saying is, or am I correct in saying that this is how you feel? And that's an important technique to use when you're actively listening, because we think that it's it is very different to just listening, and just the words are just going straight over your head, and you're thinking about, what are you going to wear tonight, or that's not really listening at all. But thank you so much. Now, I'm curious to know, what is your favorite self-help book? If you read any self-help books, is there one?
Oh, you know what? I used to read a lot of self-help books, but it's been years. What did I enjoy? God, I used to read so many of them. I think there was a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I found really great. I can't remember the author, maybe Dale Carnegie or something. It's very well known. It's like a New York bestseller.
Yes.
But I think I read it, and a lot of it was really pertinent to me, because I'm very guilty. I still do it to this day, in that I quite like hearing myself talk. I feel that I'm I've got a broad spectrum of things to talk about, and being a listener is much more important, to be honest. Like in all kinds of successes in life, if you want to be successful in life, it's the good listener rather than the good talker that is probably going to give himself the most opportunities. So I think that book, that was a relevant point within it, and that the author, he goes on to say how he often found that by being an active listener, that he really done well in his career to establish strong rapport with people. So I think
Yes.
that was a great book for that reason.
Yeah.
There was another book recently that came out that I think I flicked through called, it was very popular. It was again, it had an orange cover. It was like, do you remember Mark Manson was the author?
That's something with the F word in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Learn to not give a, not give an F. Something like that. I think I flicked through it, and what I didn't read it quite so closely, but what I found very impressive about the book was that it validated a lot of things that I sort of learned myself, and that you need to don't not care about what people think about you, but just realize that it's not really that important. It's not that important what other people perceive you as. And to be honest, I think one of the points in the book, or what I picked up from it is that people think about you a lot less than you think they're thinking about you.
Correct.
So if you're self-conscious about things, if you're self-conscious about perhaps how someone's going to perceive you because you're maybe oversharing something emotional about yourself, realistically, they're probably not having negative thoughts in that capacity.
No, and such a good tip as well. Thank you so much, Ari. Is there any parting words you'd like to share with us? A question that maybe I haven't focused on. Do you have any further reflections you'd like to add? I know we've been talking for almost 50 minutes, so this is a pretty big interview.
I told you I like to talk. I think specifically for guys, I found in my life, if you can strive to be a role model and strive to personify positive traits, you will find that is very good for your mental health as well. So guys out there, even if you're a young guy, perhaps if you're 21 or 22, there's going to be another guy coming into the system of yachting soon. And if you can try to mentor him and offer him sound counsel, offer him a good role model, and this will probably be really, really great for you in so many ways. I think we should all be striving to assist others. By building that within yourself, you'll find that naturally it will strengthen qualities about yourself that perhaps you didn't know you had. So by reaching out, helping people, you're actually helping yourself. So I think let's do this as a community within yachting. Let's reach out. Let's help other people, and you will notice the benefits immediately for yourself.
Thank you so much, Ari. Such a lovely way to end this interview, and thank you for standing up and showing up. And if there are any guys out there that would like to reach out to Ari or myself, I'm sure Ari would be very welcoming and supportive to you. So yeah, thanks again.
You're welcome.